Hi 8th grade historians. In this video, we will be doing a first read of Document E, Sydney Andrews' statement, to try to understand what it's all about. Again, our first step will be looking at the text features. Are there any text features you see in this document that are similar to the other documents? What do you see? I noticed this document gives us the source at the top. Sydney Andrews quoted in the Joint Report on Reconstruction 1866. The document below is an excerpt from a report by a northern white man to the United States government in 1866. It also has some background context, just like in the other documents. I noticed that this document is pretty short, just about a paragraph, and also I see one footnote, which again looks like it tells us the definition to a potentially tricky word. Next, let's source this document using our sourcing table. Follow along as I read the description at the top, and then we'll fill out the table after. Again, source Sydney Andrews, quoted in the Joint Report on Reconstruction 1866. The document below is an excerpt from a report by a northern white man to the United States government in 1866. In 1865, the United States government created the Freedmen's Bureau to help former slaves in the southern states. The Freedmen's Bureau helped people by providing medical supplies and health care and established schools. The creation of schools for former slaves was an important part of Reconstruction. Before the Civil War, Southern states outlawed the teaching of reading and writing to slaves. Up until the 1970s, the term Negro was used to identify black people, but is not used today. The first question in the sourcing asks, what type of document is this? The source tells us up here that it's a statement from Sydney Andrews. If you want to get specific, you could say that this is a quote from a joint report on Reconstruction. Question 2 asks who created it. Looking at the source gives us more information. Let's reread this part again right here. It says this is an excerpt from a report by a northern white man. So while it is a statement from Sydney Andrews, it looks like this other northern white man created the document. This is one of the reasons why it's important to source our documents to give context. A northern white man would have a very different perspective from a formerly enslaved person. So we need to keep this in mind as we read the text. Question 3 asks, where was this document created? It doesn't exactly say where it was created, but you can make a guess based on who created it and the source information at the top. Where do you think the document was most likely created? I'm going to make a guess that this was most likely created in the North, since it was created by a northern white man. It's fine if you picked something else. The where of this document wasn't as clear as some of the other ones. For question 4, it again explicitly tells us the year, 1866. And like for the other documents, the last question might be the hardest. However, with this one, if you reread the source at the top, you may be able to pick out who this document was created for. What do you think? It says that this was a report written for the United States government. And we've completed sourcing this final document. Thinking about the perspective and the context for each document will always help you better understand primary and secondary sources. Now I will read the whole document. Think about the perspective of who created the document and who is quoted. Also, think about the big question, were Black people really free during Reconstruction? Does this document support the claim that Black people were free, or does it support the claim that Black people were not free during Reconstruction? From the top, Document E, Sydney Andrews' statement. Source, Sydney Andrews quoted in the Joint Report on Reconstruction, 1866. The document below is an excerpt from a report by a northern white man to the United States government in 1866. In 1865, the United States government created the Freedmen's Bureau to help former slaves in southern states. The Freedmen's Bureau helped people by providing medical supplies and health care and establishing schools. The creation of schools for former slaves was an important part of Reconstruction. Before the Civil War, Southern states outlawed the teaching of reading and writing to slaves. Up until the 1970s, the term Negro was used to identify black people, but is not used today. Report from Sydney Andrews. Many of the Negroes, common plantation Negroes, and day laborers, I'm going to look at the footnote. Laborers means workers. And day laborers in towns and villages were supporting little schools themselves. Everywhere I found them hoping to get their children into schools. I often noticed that workers in stores and men working in warehouses and cart drivers on the streets had spelling books with them and were studying them during the time they were not working. Go outside any large town in the South and walk among the Negro housing, and you will see children and in many cases grown Negroes sitting in the sun alongside their cabins studying.